Hello, everybody, and welcome into the 5th edition of SEC Live. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Joining me today is Tyler. He is back from his move, joining us. Thank you for Chris for filling in again. Guys, can you please do me a favor? Hit that like button, subscribe down below. It really helps out what we're trying to grow here. We're trying to grow this brand of SEC football on the voice of college football, so please do that. Also, if you're going to shop using or go on Amazon like most of us do, use the Amazon link in the description. Does not change the buying process, does not change the buying experience. All it does is put a little bit of change in Mark's pocket from Jeff Bezos' pocket. Also, if you don't want to watch us, but you want to listen to us, go to Amazon, Apple, Spotify, type in the voice of college football, type in the SEC channel, we have a new Big Ten channel. You can type that in. You can type in Texas, Oklahoma, whatever your team is, you can find it there if you would rather listen than watch. So please do that as well. And this is an exciting week in the SEC. The last couple have actually been exciting weeks in the SEC. And let's jump into the first thing that came to my mind. And we've talked about a little bit, Tyler, Tennessee's quarterback problem. Nico has not been playing well. So the stats for him versus Florida, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, 60.5% completion percentage, 1 touchdown in 0 interceptions. Let me repeat that. 1 touchdown and 0 interceptions in 3 games. What do you think's going on there, Tyler?
Well, it's with Tennessee, it's been weird because Nico's been very uncomfortable. And that's the last thing you want from, a freshman, a first-year starter at least who doesn't really have that much experience. I know he played against Iowa and had a, solid game. His QBR against Florida was literally 17.5. He did have that interception. I think he also had a fumble. No, he had 2 fumbles against Florida. This is a game, this past weekend, Tennessee should have lost. Simply put is that Florida outplayed Tennessee. And if I'm a Florida fan, I'd feel pretty terrible about that whole game simply because, you outplayed Tennessee. You should have won the game. But Billy Napier jumps in and makes some terrible decisions coaching-wise all game, especially 4th and 1. He runs a sweep, and he's done this multiple times at Florida. I don't understand the finesse part of his game, but there's his coaching style for you. But Nico, 2 total turnovers against Florida. You go back to the Arkansas game, and this, again, he's uncomfortable. He's very uncomfortable in the pocket. He's not making the right reads. I just don't know what's going on necessarily with Tennessee's offense. The plays are there, in my opinion. It's not like they really just can't run the football. I know they struggled all first half against Arkansas, but after that, they were able to run the football. And the passing game was opened up, but Nico just couldn't make certain throws. And whenever he's pressured, he folds instantly. So Tennessee has a big game this week, and obviously against Alabama. You kind of got to hope that he's able to fix some mental things, because to me it looks like he has some type of mental thing going on. Nothing to do physically. It's with his pre-snap abilities, because to be honest with you, it doesn't look like there is much yet. And again, he's only 18, 19 years old, a freshman quarterback. Again, redshirt freshman. He did start against Iowa last year, who had a top 5 defense, but still, he's just very uncomfortable. And for me, like I said, it looks like something mentally is off with Nico.
Yeah, I agree. I think he gets pretty agitated very easily in the pocket, and you see him. Honestly, guys, at this point in his career, it's pretty obvious just watching him. He's a one-read guy, and then his eyes completely go down to the ground, and he's not able to read the defense after that. And a part of that also, I didn't know this, I found this out today, Tennessee has the worst tackle duo in the SEC combined, according to Pro Football Focus. So that doesn't help out either. But Dylan Sampson has been playing pretty well. He is the SEC leading rusher. He has 15 touchdowns already, which, yes, a lot of that came versus bad competition, but he still played decently well versus the other teams. And I could give Nico an excuse versus Arkansas and Oklahoma. I think both those teams have solid to good defenses. I cannot give you an excuse for Florida. Florida is a bad defense. They're horrendous. They probably are the second or third worst defense in the SEC. I don't think they're the worst. I think Mississippi State is. But I also don't know if it's coaching with Josh Heupel. Did Josh Heupel get in the ear of Nico and say, "Hey, you cannot make mistakes. You cannot have turnovers, stuff like that." And then he's not willing to take chances down the field and push the ball down the field. And to me, if he's saying that to Nico, that is limiting Nico in his growth. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have turnovers. But guess what? This team is good enough to win, even if he does that versus some of these teams on the schedule, because that defense is very good. And you're bound with the wide receivers and weapons you have in Nico's arm. You're going to have explosive plays if you allow him to push the ball down the field. So I don't know if that's a coaching thing. But I know after the Oklahoma game, I actually came on here and said my 5 takeaways, as I do on this channel, 5 takeaways every week from the SEC, that this defense for Tennessee was good enough to win a national championship. And I stand by that. The defense has been very, very good, but Nico has not been. And honestly, looking around, you and I, Tyler, have been on this from the very beginning. We both said at this point, he's not a great quarterback. We said that like 2-3 weeks ago. And I said he's good, but he has the potential to be great. I honestly don't know right now if he's even good. I think he might just be straight up average. And with that defense, and if you have a straight up average quarterback in this SEC, you're probably going to go 8-4 or 9-3. So that's my opinion on that. I don't know if there's anything, if the ceiling's higher than anything than 9-3 if he continues to play this way. Could be wrong about that, but that's my opinion on the Tennessee quarterback situation.
Yeah, and with Nico, you did make a point about the offensive line and specifically the tackles. That's an easy, I guess, scapegoat for your quarterback play. But like, if you look at some of these situations, he's got wide receivers right in front of him that are wide open, and he's just either A, overthrowing the ball, or B, not making the right read, or C, just completely missing them. And, oh, by the way, he just completely folds in the pocket. He's 6'6", 215. I've never seen a quarterback that is 6'6", or even his type of build that just folds as he does. It's kind of weird with that. And he can run if he needs to. Again, you kind of touched on it. Maybe he's being coached to not progress down the field, which to me, that would just take so much away from the quarterback position, because that's a big part of playing quarterback, reading the safeties, reading the corners, reading the linebackers, reading the whole field. So I would hope that's not necessarily the case, but with a younger quarterback, I don't know. But he's against Bama. Bama's front's going to be able to get to the quarterback. He's going to have to step it up and make some of these throws, because most of these throws, especially in Josh Heupel's offense, aren't the most challenging, and they should be right there. That's just how he runs this offense, and with these wide receivers. So, and if they can run the football, he's given a lot. I mean, this team should not be 5-1, and they should not have even been in OT with Florida. They should have won that game convincingly. They were, I think, a 17-point favorite, 16, 17, whatever. I think they opened up at 14. But this offense for Tennessee just hasn't been good in SEC play. They escaped a win against Oklahoma. They controlled that one. That's probably the best they played thus far in SEC play. But they escaped a win at Oklahoma. They lost at Arkansas. Debatably, Arkansas is probably the best team that they've played. And then they played a bad Florida team whose coach is horrible and he's on his way out. If Florida fans know it, that was a horribly coached game from Billy Napier. And oh, by the way, Florida almost won the game.
Yeah, they probably should have went for it in overtime with that 2-point conversion. And I also think Graham Mertz was playing pretty well in the second half before he got hurt. If he stays healthy, they probably do win the game. Tennessee fans have been asking for a great defense for a long time to go along with Josh Heupel's offense. They finally got it, and the offense is somewhat collapsed. And this is an elimination game, obviously, for the SEC championship game in my eyes. And honestly, I don't see much changing, because I just saw them versus Florida. Bama does have a better defense than Florida. It's not a lot better. The back end is really bad. So maybe Nico can get on track versus that secondary. If you can't get on track versus this, I can't believe I'm saying this, but versus this Alabama secondary, you're probably not getting back on track versus any other team you're going to play in the rest of the season. Let's jump into your comments real quick. Everyone liked the stream. Yes, thank you, Tony. Everyone liked the stream. Tony says I want SG1 back. Tony Montana, Texas man, do you like the Reds? Went to a game this year and had a blast. Might go. I actually don't. Look what I'm wearing right now. If I can, right there. They're playing right now, actually. So missing that. But what do the Reds have to do with Texas? They have nothing to do with Texas. That is correct, though. I am from Ohio. Let's see here. Put Kirby at linebacker. He may have to suit up in this game. We'll see. We will get to that game, obviously. But let's get into this. So we're halfway through the season. Contenders and pretenders. So basically, I'm going to go team by team, Tyler. You're going to tell me, and I'm going to break this down a little bit more. Can this team win the SEC championship? Can this team get to the SEC championship? And then if neither of those, they're just a pretender. So let's start out. We're going to go through the undefeateds first. And give me reasons why or what you believe about the Texas A&M Aggies.
Oh, right now they are basically number one because they played 3 SEC games. They won all 3. This team is getting better and better every single week. Their defensive line is disgusting, 3 deep at every position. Their DBs are disgusting too. They're pretty much 2 or 3 deep at every position on the D line and defensive backcourt. Man, I'm a Georgia fan. I kind of wish that Georgia had 1 or 2 of those Texas A&M DBs, but I think this is a clear contender. They are a little bit better than what I thought they'd be. I still thought they'd be a 9-3 team, especially with that schedule. But this schedule for Texas A&M is fitting to be very nice. I mean, you play LSU at home. You play Texas last game of the season at home. In between that, at Auburn, before the Texas game, that was, I thought, going to be a loss because I did expect Auburn to be a lot better. But that looks like a win now. And then at Mississippi State, I mean, where are at most I see 2 more losses. So I think Texas A&M has a great shot at getting to the SEC title game. I think they're a clear contender.
Do you think they can win the SEC title game?
Yes, especially with that defensive line. That defense, the best. Texas A&M has the best defense in the SEC. Now, Connor Wigman's going to have to make throws. If he plays like he did against Missouri, yeah, they can win the SEC for sure.
Yeah, so that's where I don't think they can win the SEC championship game. I do think they can get there. Unless Connor Wigman does what he does versus Missouri, then they can win the SEC championship game. The problem is I don't think he will. I've seen him do that in 2 games. It's been Missouri and Miami. Everything else has been from him. Nothing great, nothing bad. It's just been okay. Their wide receivers are better than I thought they were, other than, like you and I have said, Muhammad is not showing up. I don't know what the hell's going on there. You kind of saw in the Missouri game. He got frustrated a couple times. He actually threw his helmet down on the sideline on one of those. So something is going on there, but Thomas and those guys have stepped up at wide receiver, and they're playing well. Colin Klein called a pretty flawless game versus Missouri. But Missouri, you and I both agree, is overrated, and we'll get to them actually in this list. But it does help out A&M that, like you said, that schedule is very light. I actually think the hardest game other than Texas left on the schedule because it's on the road is probably South Carolina versus that defense. I think that's going to be a very interesting game. But I do think Texas A&M can make it to the SEC championship game because you can get there with 2 losses. Like they could lose 2 games versus certain teams and still get there. Now there's other like at LSU, you have to win that game because most likely that's going to be a tiebreaker between you two and LSU. We see their schedule and how they're playing now and how they've gotten better on defense. There's a chance they can make it too. And actually, we're already on LSU. That is the next team up. What do you think of the LSU Tigers?
Well, I think they're slightly worse than Texas A&M. But I will say this. I picked Ole Miss to win, and the game kind of went exactly how I thought, except Ole Miss found a way to lose. Ole Miss was the better team. Ole Miss was better than LSU. They were better than Kentucky as well. They just found a way to lose. That's all on Lane Kiffin, as well as that voodoo at Death Valley. But if LSU goes undefeated at home, which is definitely a possibility, they play Alabama and I think they play Oklahoma as well. I guess that's not really too big of a game, but it was prior to the season. But if they went out at home, they would have that win against Alabama, and then they would have to steal one from Texas A&M or Arkansas this weekend. I'm going to go with pretender, unfortunately, here because as good as I want LSU to be, It's hard to win on the road in the SEC. And oh, by the way, you get Arkansas, then Texas A&M back-to-back. And oh, by the way, then you play Bama. That is a tough 3-game stretch. It's hard for me to see LSU win more than 1, maybe 2 games there. And then you have to play perfect after that, as well as go with the tiebreakers. I'm going to go with Pretender, unfortunately.
So I'm going to go Pretender, I guess, same thing as A&M, to win it. I do think they can get there. I said, it was last week, with Harold Perkins' injury, I actually think that benefits them. I know it's crazy to say, but I don't think Harold Perkins is a great football player. I think he's a great athlete, and I think they were trying to fit him into their defense and make him like the star of that defense and build their defense around him. And I think that was a mistake, and you saw that. In the last 2 weeks, or 2 games they played for South Alabama and Ole Miss, they played much better defensively. They've been way better defensively. And I agree with you. Ole Miss did completely blow that game, and I'm not surprised. I talked about that too in my 5 takeaways. Lane Kiffin doesn't win big football games. He hasn't. He will never. I don't believe in him. I was never on the train, but I'm never getting on that train. And I was never a big fan of Jackson Dart either, but LSU did pull it out. Nussmeier, if he can just turn down some of those dangerous throws. That guy has really good arm talent. He has good wide receivers. Their offensive line is spectacular in pass protection. I think if their defense continues to trend in that right direction, I think they can get to the SEC championship game. Do I think they can win it? No, but I think they can get there. Again, mostly based off schedule. LSU and A&M, if they had harder schedules, I would probably say no, but based off schedule, I think they can get there. Next up, we'll get to the last undefeated team, my Texas Longhorns. Tyler, what do you have to say about them?
Yeah, that's a clear contender right there. I won't really there's nothing else I can really say other than they're the best team in college football as of right now. Yeah, I mean, they got a real good defense, top 5 in college football defensively, a real elite offensive talent, rush game. The only flaw you could maybe pick up is the rush game thus far. It isn't as good as it's nowhere near as good as what it was last year, but it's serviceable. And maybe it's just because you played 6, bad teams. Michigan's horrible. Oklahoma has no offense, but you play who's on your schedule, right? It's not Texas's fault, regarding that Michigan and Oklahoma look worse than what everyone thought, as well as Texas is clearly, like I said, the best team in college football. They deserve to be number 1. This is a clear contender for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think I put up the question on the Texas channel whether this rushing game is good enough to win the national championship right now, and I don't think it is that good. Now, if they did what they did versus Oklahoma, who is a good defensive team, where they rush for like 170 yards, then yes, they are good enough running the ball. My only question is that this defense is good? That is not the question. My question is how good? Are they good? Are they great? Are they elite? And I think that's going to be answered this weekend. This is by far the biggest test they faced offensively versus Georgia. Georgia, to me, has finally found someone in Dylan Bell to where that is their number 1 option, in my opinion. We'll see how he's using this game. Do I think Georgia's a great offensive team compared to the rest of college football? No, but they're definitely miles ahead of anyone we played. I mean, Oklahoma and Michigan are anemic offensively. They're garbage offensively. They're pretty good. Oklahoma's very good on defense. Michigan's pretty good on defense, but they're bad offensively. So, yes, I do think Texas is a contender to win the SEC. And we'll see how they fare this week versus Georgia. Before we get into the next team, let's jump into your comments. Tony, Texas A&M ain't making it. I mean, I really think based off schedule, there's a really good chance Texas and Texas A&M face back-to-back weeks in the regular season and then the SEC championship game. That's my opinion.
Texas A&M and Arkansas are probably the 2 teams I wouldn't want to play. And then playing them at their house is going to be even tougher, especially Texas A&M. That is a really good football team. If you're not watching Texas A&M, or if you don't think Texas A&M is a good team, I don't know what else to tell you. That is a very well-coached football team. They have top 10 talent. A&M's definitely, they should be undefeated. They gave away the Notre Dame game, but they're getting better and better. They're a legitimate team for sure.
I got it on mute, so let me know when they talk about a real game, Georgia versus Texas. We'll get to there, I promise. We got 4 big games to talk about. That is one of them. Tony also says SG1 should join the stream. Hey, he's welcome anytime. You just got to let us know. Texas man, you talk about how Georgia will win, and Tyler you know what? We can do that when we get to that game. We can do that.
Tony, you got to keep up with the videos. I kind of already did that today. Or maybe it was yesterday.
Andrew didn't even catch the 8-4 SMH.
Yeah, Texas 8-4, but you said A&M because you already know the joke there.
Yeah, sure didn't. Okay, let's move on then. Contenders and pretenders. So let's start out with the team Texas plays this week, or start back. Tyler, what do you have to say about Georgia?
Yeah, this is really for me. Well, really for Georgia. That is, if Georgia goes in this game and loses this game, doesn't matter what the score is. I don't think they're going to make it to the SEC title. You still got to play Tennessee and Ole Miss, and you play them back to back, one on the road. By the way, I've been saying this a couple times. This is Georgia's 5th straight road game that happened to be a primetime game. So you already know the team that Georgia plays is going to go all out again. But Georgia's still a contender, as if I don't know if they can win this weekend, to be honest with you. But if they lose this game to Texas, I don't see them making it to the SEC title game, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion. For the playoffs, they're sure for heck they are a contender. For the SEC title, I don't know if Georgia's good enough this year.
Yeah, so you're right about that. Because this game hasn't happened yet, I'm going to say they are a contender and they can win the SEC championship game, but they have to win this game. I completely agree. If they lose this game, they are going to be out of the SEC championship race, and they better win out, because if they lose another game, then they will not be in the college football playoff. I don't think a 9-3 Georgia is probably getting in at that point, because you would have lost to, unless that win is versus Tennessee and Tennessee wins this week versus Alabama, I just don't see it happening. But then again, I do think one 9-3 team this year will get in. I just don't know where it's going to be from. So maybe they could, but this is a big game for Georgia in multiple ways. I still think talent-wise, you have to say contender, and definitely a contender for the national championship. Let's go to, and this one might be controversial. It's going to be interesting. Let's go to Alabama, Tyler. What do you think about them?
Oh, yeah, they're definitely a contender. I know a lot. Listen, I don't know what's going on at Alabama these past 2 weeks. There's something internal going on right there, but the football team themselves, if they can get over that hurdle, they are a legit national championship quality team. We saw it against Georgia. People call it a fluke, but no, that was Alabama football for you. That's Kalen DeBoer. He might be the best coach in college football when it comes to big games. Just look what he's done in the past. The problem with Kalen DeBoer is what we've already seen. He loses to Vanderbilt. When he was at Fresno State, he lost to Hawaii and I believe Utah State. That was 2021, a year they almost beat Oregon. And then the year they actually beat top 15 UCLA, who beat LSU. But they had that good signature win. They were the best team in the Mountain West. They found a way to lose it. Go to 2022. Guess what happens? He's the head coach for Washington, and he loses to 1-5 Arizona State, and then he lost to a 4-4 or 4-3 UCLA team. Got destroyed. This is just what he's done, unfortunately, in the past. So if Bama can get over the internal things, the mental things going on over there, they are for sure contenders, as well as their schedule. Once they get past Tennessee, they do go on the road against LSU. But I really do think at worst they go 1-1. It's if they can beat all these bad teams. They're playing down to their competition. That's Kalen DeBoer for you. I'm still going to go with contender, though.
Yeah, I agree. They are a contender. I don't think they can win a national championship with how bad that defense is, though. Unless that just miraculously halfway through the year, this defense starts to get better. I just don't see it happening. They're really bad on defense. Like, Lenora Sellers had his best game versus Alabama, and it was on the road coming off Vanderbilt, where that should have been a ass chewing of the century to get your defense to play better, and it just didn't happen. Like, they could have lost that game rather easily. And like you said, they do play up and down a competition, something they never did under Nick Saban. Always played to the standard that he talked about. So I do think they can win the SEC championship, or get there at least. I don't think they can win the national championship, but yeah, it's kind of weird. I think this week is kind of an elimination game as well with Alabama and Tennessee. Whoever that loses that game is not going to be in the SEC championship game. And it's going to be very interesting that both those teams have weird flaws. Nico, we already talked about. Then you have that Alabama secondary. And then on the opposite side, can Jalen Milroe make enough plays versus that really good Tennessee defense? So it's going to be a very fun game to watch. I do not know which way it's going to go. We do have to pick games here. So when we get there, we will talk about that. And speaking of Tennessee, let's talk about them. Do you think they are an SEC championship contender or not?
Unfortunately, no. Which sucks for me because I was very high on Tennessee. I had them going 10-2. By the way, in the off season, I had them losing to Georgia and Arkansas. So they could still do that and prove me right. But with how Nico's been playing, their defense is way better than I thought, I will say. But with how Nico's been playing, he's really the missing piece. He's the issue, unfortunately. It's not just the tackles there, or Tennessee fans will blame the offensive line. It's Nico missing some of these wide open throws, being too high, too low, making the wrong read. He's kind of been the issue. Now their defense is elite. They have a top 15 defense in college football. That itself is going to keep them in every single game. Unfortunately, I think they're going to go 9-3, so I'm going to go Pretender.
Yeah, I agree. I had them at 9-3 going into the year, and I think that's what they're going to go. I do think they're a pretender unless Nico is somehow able to have like a renaissance in the second half and turn into the guy he's supposed to be, or at least somewhat of the guy he's supposed to be good. I think then they can make the SEC championship game, but I don't see that happening. At this point, guys, I think through 6 games, you're basically about as complete as you're going to be. Are there little things you can change and little differences that you can make going down later in the year? Yes, but you're not going to get much better from this. You're like a 95% complete product of what you see. So I think Tennessee's a pretender. I don't think they're going to make the SEC championship game. I don't think they can win the SEC championship game if they did get there. And I do not see them as a national championship contender. That, like you said, that defense is national championship caliber, but they don't even have like a good enough quarterback to win the big game, honestly. That's my biggest thing. I just don't think he's going to make enough throws in these big-time games to win him the game. Whereas the team they're playing this week, I think Jalen Milroe is going to make enough plays with his arm. He's the second-best passer in the SEC efficiency-wise to win this game versus Tennessee, where I think Nico's probably going to make a mistake or two or, run out of bounds on 4th down with the game on the line. So whatever. I just don't understand what's happened there. But we're going to have a little bit of fun here. I have 2 teams. One of these teams I bet no one would even think of, but I have Arkansas. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, Arkansas is, like I said this coming in. This was Sam Pittman's year to prove people that he's still a good coach, or at least a decent coach. And obviously he had that win against Tennessee. He should have beaten Oklahoma State, and he debatably could have beaten Texas A&M. The game against Oklahoma State is typical Sam Pittman, right? This is what he's done in the past. He loses these close games. In fact, he's as well. Yeah, shout out to Tony. Yeah, Bobby Petrino has been huge for Arkansas as well. But this is just what Sam Pittman does, like the Oklahoma State game. That is a typical Sam Pittman coach game. Coached terribly. But he upset Tennessee, came out clutch with the defense. I will say I was way wrong about that defense. That defense is actually really good for Arkansas. Shout out to Arkansas. They got a great front 7, really. And that's a shocker to me, especially for this season. But, yeah, Arkansas is a legitimate they're a sleeper team. They play LSU this week. They could definitely beat LSU at home. Don't forget they still play Texas. That's going to be a tough game for Texas, especially with Texas's schedule, which looks a lot tougher now than what it did in the preseason, that's for sure, with Vanderbilt right after Georgia and then at Arkansas, or maybe you get someone else before that game. But the point is, Texas' schedule is just a lot tougher. Can Arkansas win another game they shouldn't? I still think yes. So I think Arkansas could definitely get to 8-4 because the schedule is relatively tricky. They're definitely not a contender, in my opinion, for the SEC title, but I think they are a sleeper team to maybe pull another upset.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think if they won the games they were supposed to win, they could have easily won that Texas A&M game. They could have beat Oklahoma State. They could be undefeated right now. They really could be. And if they were undefeated right now, I actually think they could make the SEC championship game. Obviously, one of those was out of conference, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, the A&M game is probably going to be a tiebreaker. This week versus LSU would definitely be a tiebreaker. So I agree with you. I think they're going to beat someone they quote unquote shouldn't. I think it's going to be either Texas, LSU. I believe there's another big game on the schedule too. They play Ole Miss.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I think there's a possibility for that. I think they'll win one of those 3 games, but I don't think it's going to be enough to get the SEC championship. You'd have to win all 3 of those games. I don't see that happening. I mean, it could. And Sam Pittman is, I made, again, another video about this, about talking about he is as good as his coordinators are. His coordinators are fantastic this year, and that's why he's so good. When they were good in 2021, it was sort of the same thing with Kendall Briles running the offense. So Sam Pittman is a solid coach, and he's doing a solid job at Arkansas. I think they're probably going to end up going 8-4. So that would be a really good year, seeing as their over-under win total on the year was 5.5. I don't see them getting into the SEC championship game, though, unless they pull out multiple upsets along the way. And then we both agree on this one. We can make it quick if you want. Missouri. That will be the last team we talk about. I'll let you jump on that first.
Yeah, it's they're a pretender, unfortunately. They don't have, number one, they're not a very talented team. Now, they are relatively talented for a Missouri team, not an SEC team. For a Missouri team, they are incredibly well coached with Eli Drinkwitz. But they don't have enough stigma, and they don't have a leader like they did with Schrader last year to run the table. Now, they benefited really well after next week. They have no one else they play. They play, I guess, at South Carolina. Well, they play at South Carolina. That's going to be their toughest game. So they could sneak themselves at 10-2 and get into the playoffs and maybe even get into the SEC title. The problem is they lost to Texas A&M and more than likely Alabama. So for me, this is still a pretender team. I personally hope that, I hate to be like this, I hope this team doesn't end up 10-2 and making it to the playoffs. That would just be a wasted spot.
Yeah, I kind of agree. They are horrendous defensively. We saw that versus Texas A&M. And then offensively, they don't play to their strengths. Like, I'm going to keep saying this. Why they do not force feed the ball to the guy that's going to be either the first or second wide receiver off the board in the NFL draft is crazy to me. They've never had a wide receiver up to this caliber other than Jeremy Maclin, and they just seem to ignore him. They give Theo Weiss more opportunities, which doesn't make any sense. Brady Cook is a nice player. I think, honestly, he reminds me a lot of Max Duggan, maybe a little bit better of a passer, but they're pretty damn similar, honestly. And then the offensive line, they just, I believe, benched Caden Green in the game versus UMass. I mean, that's all you need to know there. That guy came over from Oklahoma, big-time transfer, and then you bench him on the road versus UMass. So, no, this is not a contender. I had them at 8-4 going into the season with this crappy schedule. I think they'll finish slightly better than that. They're probably going to end up 9-3, but still, they could end up 8-4. I would not shock me if Oklahoma beat them. That's a rivalry game. Oklahoma will play up a little bit. And let's be honest here. Yes, Oklahoma's offense is bad. They've been able to – Auburn and Missouri probably have similar defenses. I think they're going to be able to put up similar amount of stats when they do play Missouri. So it's going to be very interesting. I don't think they're a contender, but that will be an interesting game to watch out for.
Agreed.
Let's jump into beat a horrible Kentucky team. I'm guessing Vanderbilt. Yeah, I just couldn't. I'm not. Listen, I like Vanderbilt, but I wasn't going to waste time talking about them going to the SEC championship game. Milroe, let's see if I can pull this up. Milroe would be nothing without Ryan Williams. I disagree with that.
He can run.
Yeah, and he's made strides throwing the ball, even if it's not Ryan Williams. Jeremy Bernard's actually pretty good, too. I mean, I'm not shocked by that, though. He's pretty good at Washington. Texas, Georgia, and Ohio State and Oregon will play all 3 times. I don't know.
I hope not.
I think this season's going to be way crazier than that.
I feel like that'd kind of be bad for college football too if you had the same 3 teams playing each other 3 times. I really hope that doesn't happen. For the love of the sport too.
Carl last. Who has Texas beat Michigan? What are they now? No, I mean I agree. Texas hasn't beaten anyone that's really good or anything like that, but they've dominated every single second of every football game. It hasn't been close.
Yeah, Michigan, I feel bad. Michigan's fall off is horrible. I mean, they have one of the worst pass defenses in college football. Who would have thought about that with that DB core? It's crazy to me.
Yeah, their front seven's still good, and Will Johnson's good, but every other person on the back end's bad.
Their coach pretty bad.
Yeah. Tyler invented the Missouri as a pretender train. Yeah.
I wouldn't say I invented it, but my goodness. Those fans were crazy, and now I haven't seen a Missouri fan in 3 weeks.
No, they that guy tweeted out on the bye week before the A&M game, if Missouri played Texas on a neutral field, we'd beat them. And it's after that, he's been really damn quiet. We had Clemson and Bama playing in the Natty 3 years in a row. Yeah, but that's completely different. That's not three
Which
times in
sucked.
one season.
That was bad for the sport as well. Everyone thank Georgia for stepping up, and LSU. Thank
I
Georgia
will say
stepping up for an LSU.
two of those national championship games were very good, though. Like,
Yeah.
I will gladly sign up for a Jake Coker versus Deshaun Watson shootout, and then a Deshaun Watson last second drive versus Jalen Hurts in Alabama. Those were two really good games. The other one was a blowout, but those two were good. Never feel bad about the downfall of cheaters.
Yeah, true. Oh, with Michigan.
Yeah. Okay, so again, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Share this out with your friends and family. If you do not want to watch, but you want to listen, go over to Apple, go over to Spotify, go over to Amazon. Check out, just type in the Voice of College Football, find it, listen to it, whatever you choose, Texas, SEC, Big Ten, Oklahoma, Iowa, we have it there. Also, use the Amazon link in the description to buy whatever you buy normally. It does not change the buying process. All it does is put a little bit of change from Jeff Bezos' pocket into Mark Rogers' pocket. It really helps out what we're trying to do. I really appreciate that for you, from you guys. Thank you guys for that. And we are going to jump into some football games now. South Carolina off that loss to Alabama in Tuscaloosa is getting 2.5 points, which was surprising to most people, versus Oklahoma on the going on the road. Let's talk about South Carolina and some of their stats. They averaged 27.5 points per game offensively, 58th in the country, 4.9 yards per play, which is 100th in the country, 3.9 yards per rush, which is 83rd in the country, 7.5 yards per pass, which is 58th in the country. And that sack percentage is still looking mighty bad. That offensive line is still bad. 14.77% of dropbacks end in a sack. That is 134th in the country. Still dead last. I don't think that's going to change. I think that's going to be dead last. Opponents' points per game, still pretty good. 20.3 points per game. That is 25th in the country. 4.4 yards per play. That is 12th in the country. 3.1 yards allowed rushing per play, that is 18th. 6.5 yards per pass, that is 38th. And then sack percentage, 9.79% of the time they get to the quarterback. That is 9th in the country. So they're very good on defense. This could be a very low scoring game because we'll get into these absolutely abysmal Oklahoma offensive statistics. 24.3 points per game, 77th in the country. 4.3 yards per play, 127th in the country. Yards per rush, 3.4, 105th in the country. Yards per pass, 5.8, 123rd in the country. QB sack rate. So on offense, they allow 10% of dropbacks to end in a sack. That is 118th in the country. 19 points per game allowed on the defensive side of the ball, 19th in the country, 4.8 yards per play, 26th in the country, 3.1 yards per rush, 16th in the country, 7.8 yards per pass, 87th in the country, and a 10.05% sack rate, which is 7th in the country, which is very good. These teams resemble each other a lot. Tyler, what do you think about this game?
Well, Oklahoma has to feel good because this one's at home. Now, you did lose to Tennessee last time you played at home. But for me, the key to this game is going to be the run game. I do expect both these teams to try to go with a similar style, and that's to just wear down the opposing defense because statistically speaking, both these offenses are equally as bad, but their defenses are relatively good. Or Oklahoma's is probably better, but still, South Carolina's defense is disgustingly good. Their defensive line is unreal. For me as well, this is kind of an elimination game for a bowl game. Both these teams have a really, really tough end to the season. You know, shout out to South Carolina. They already kind of pulled their upset at Kentucky. That was a good win for them. Oklahoma, you could say the same. They went on the road and beat Auburn. I know that's not really an upset, but that's a game you could feel good about. But the problem is both these teams' offenses are so bad. I could legitimately see this being like a 12-9 Iowa versus Minnesota type game or something stupid like that. I think, like I said, it's going to come down to which offense can wear down the opposing defense. And I'm actually going to go with the road team here. I think South Carolina is going to come on the road and upset Oklahoma. in an elimination game for a bowl game. I understand Oklahoma's 4-2, and obviously South Carolina, all they have to do is win 3 more games. For Oklahoma, they have to win 2 more, one of which they play Maine. But look at both these teams' schedules. It's ridiculously hard. And it just, to me, feels like Shane Beamer is due for one of his flukish wins, this of which would be on the road. It's an earlier kickoff. It's a weird game. I guess Hawkins is going to be playing. I wouldn't be shocked if Arnold is able to come back, and that might be the spark Oklahoma needs to save their season. But I'm gonna go with Rocket Sanders and Lenore Sellers to have more of an impact in the run game, and I'm gonna take South Carolina on the road, 20-17 at Oklahoma.
Okay, yeah, I mean these teams are almost exact carbon copies of each other. Both, I mean Lenore Sellers is better than whatever Oklahoma decides to throw out at quarterback, but offensive line wise, they're both bad. Running backs can't really get going. Javonte Barr. I still think Jackson Arnold might be the second leading rusher for Oklahoma, which is freaking insane after he hasn't played the last 2.5 games. So Oklahoma's really bad on offense. Again, like you said, very good on defense for both these teams. I think the front four of South Carolina is slightly better than the front four for Oklahoma, but Oklahoma's got them at the linebacker position. Secondary are both the weaknesses on the defense, but doesn't matter because you're playing 2 quarterbacks that can't really push the ball down the field. And honestly, Oklahoma doesn't have any weapons to push the ball down the field. Whereas, South Carolina, Nick Harper kind of did show up in that Alabama game. He looked pretty good. So that is your one weapon to push the ball down the field there. I mean, this is a complete toss-up game. Would not shock me either way. I do think you're going to see one or both of these teams score a defensive touchdown. And I think I'm going to take Oklahoma here super close. I'm going to go Oklahoma 23, South Carolina 20. So I'm going to take the over. Tyler's going to be on the under, and he's going to be on South Carolina. I'm going to be on the opposite side with Oklahoma. I think it's just a complete toss-up game. I think these teams are basically the same team. If they played on a neutral field, it'd be 5-5 each time, and the spread would basically be a pick 'em. That's my opinion on that. Like, these are the most average of average teams the SEC has, honestly.
Well, probably below average for the SEC standards because these two teams, oh my God, it's hard to watch these two teams play offense. It's almost like if these two teams' offenses faced each other, we could see a much, I guess, worse game, but it would be kind of funny. But no, in all seriousness, this is gonna be a bad game. I'm kind of expecting similar to the Auburn game, except for some reason Auburn was able to dominate on the line of scrimmage. That was kind of interesting with Oklahoma, or at least have a little bit more push than I expected. I guess dominate is not necessarily the best word, but Auburn definitely should have beaten Oklahoma. This is going to be a situation where I think that fluke kind of bites you back because that's where I think Shane Beamer comes in. Watch out for Beamer ball. His special teams. They're going to, again, came up clutch last week with an onside kick. This is what he does. So don't be surprised if South Carolina can steal some points with that special team. I'm going to go with Shane Beamer. I got to trust him here.
And honestly, this is a big game for Brent Venables because if they end up going, but if they end up going 6-6 with all the offseason, I'm going to say hype because there are people out there, and I've talked about this, where they sold you a load of BS, honestly, as Oklahoma fans. You shouldn't have bought into it. I don't know why anyone thought this team was going to be 9-3 or better. Like, that's just crazy. I had them at 8-4, and I said that is the absolute best case scenario, and clearly that has not turned out with all the injuries and quarterback play they've gotten. And if he goes 6-6 this year, he's going to have to win 9+ games next year. And if he does not do that, there's a really good chance Brent Venables is fired by the end of next year. So this is a big game. I agree. And same with Shane Beamer too. Like, if they don't become bowl eligible, he could be gone at the end of the year.
I agree.
Next up, let's go to a game I'm super excited to talk about, but also watch. LSU versus Arkansas. LSU is favored on the road by 3 points. The over-under here is 55.5. Let's talk about the LSU offense. They are 30th in the country at 32.2 points per game. They average 6.7 yards per play, which is 15th in the country, 4.9 yards per rush, which is 40th in the country, 7.9 yards per pass, which is 35th in that country. And this, it's getting ridiculous how good this offensive line is versus the pass. They did very good versus Ole Miss. There was pressure, but there was never any sacks. And you do have to give Garrett Nussmeier a big credit there because he was able to move up and around in the pocket very well to avoid pressure. this is insane. 0.92% of dropbacks in a sack for LSU. That is third in the country. I don't know who number 1 and number 2 is, but that is very good. 22.6 points per game allowed. That is 43rd in the country. 5.6 yards per play allowed. That is 70th in the country. 3.8 yards per rush, 41st in the country. And 8 yards per pass, which is 93rd in the country. That secondary is still very questionable, but they are getting to the quarterback better than I thought they were. 11.29% of dropbacks and in a sack for that LSU defense. That is very good. Now let's move on to Arkansas. 25.6 points per game. That is 69th in the country. 5.6 yards per play. That is 60th in the country. Yards per rush, 4.3, 63rd in the country. Yards per pass, 7.6. That is 48th in the country. And their offensive line, 7.57% of dropbacks end in a sack. That is 93rd in the country, so not great. Arkansas on the defensive side of the ball, 23 points per game allowed, 48th in the country. 5.4 yards per play. That is 62nd in the country. 3.9 yards per rush, 48th in the country. 7.1 yards per pass, 55th in the country. 5.71% sack rate, which is 66th in the country. Overall, just a average to slightly above average defense for Arkansas. How do you think this game's going to play out, Tyler?
Well, I am worried for LSU here simply because they're coming off of that emotional home victory against a top 10 Ole Miss team, a rivalry game as well, and then this is the battle for the boot. It's a night game at Arkansas and Fayetteville. Here's the last time that we seen Arkansas play. It was a home game. It was a primetime game against Tennessee, and they pulled the upset. Thing is with Brian Kelly, this is when he starts to roll the dice, and this is when he starts to win games. Starts to look like a pretty good head coach. You know, early on in the year, I was questioning Brian Kelly for his coaching decisions, and to be fair, this LSU team looked bad. They just didn't look like a good LSU team. It's starting to come together, but the thing is, Arkansas just had a week off. They went through their kind of gauntlet in which they played 3 physical teams: Auburn, Texas A&M, and Tennessee back to back to back. They had a week to get ready. They had a week to think this one over. Watch LSU. I think it's going to be a back and forth game. The thing is with Arkansas, and this has kind of been the key of the season thus far, is can Talon Green play a complete game without turning the ball over? And you touched upon it. LSU's secondary is still questionable, but their quarterbacks have been playing a little bit better than last season. Ty Alexander had an interception, a big interception in that fourth quarter. That probably saved LSU the game there because Ole Miss would have scored a touchdown against LSU, and they would have won that game, and LSU wouldn't be coming into this game as high. But Talon Green, can he not turn the ball over? He has 5 interceptions on the year. I think he has 3 or 4 fumbles on the year. That's been the key to Arkansas's success, is if he doesn't make the bad play. The saving grace for Arkansas has been their defense. It's shocking, but their front 7 has kind of controlled almost every game. You can, really, it has controlled every game except for the last quarter against Texas A&M, in which it just gave out. It was it was worn out there, and Le'Veon Moss was able to burst free. But this Arkansas team is much better than what people are talking about. I was going back and forth on who I think is going to win this game. I think in the end, the LSU Tigers find a way to win this game, something like 30-27. I know that's kind of a lot of points for I guess this game, but I think both these offenses start to succeed a little bit more. Nussmeier played up and down against Ole Miss, kind of came late, kind of found himself, and I think this LSU team found themselves as well. I like the Tigers to win a close one on the road in Fayetteville, 30-27, and I think Talon Green makes that one big mistake that might end up costing him the game.
Okay, so you would go over but not take any line here because that would give you the would be a push. Man, I agree with everything you said. I think it literally just comes down to, can Talon Green make the plays he needs to make and not turn the ball over multiple times? I think they can turn the ball over one time in this game and get away with it. I do.
Yep.
But anything more than that, I don't think they can win this football game. I think it's going to be a hell of an environment. These teams do not like each other. They usually play a pretty good game. I'm going to take LSU to win the game, but I do believe Arkansas covers. I think this is a super close football game. I'm going to go LSU wins this game 31-30, so I'm going to go over as well. I'm going to take Arkansas on the points. I think coming on off an emotional win versus Ole Miss at home and then having to go on the road versus a team that just came off a bye week, and you also have Bobby Petrino having multiple weeks to scheme up for this LSU secondary and defense. And I believe Armstrong at wide receiver is going to play in this game. I know he was injured, I believe, in the Tennessee game, so that would help as well. Jaquindon Jackson, let's see what he can do on the ground versus this LSU defense. I think he's going to be able to do enough to keep it close. I don't think Arkansas wins this game. Would it surprise me if they do? No, it would not. But I'm going to take Arkansas plus the 3. I think LSU does win, though, 31-30, and I'm going to go over the 55.5. I'm super excited to watch this game. I actually would rather watch this game than the next game we're going to talk about, which is Alabama-Tennessee. I'm super excited to watch this one.
Yeah, and it should be a good game, especially for the boot.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about that game. Alabama versus Tennessee. Alabama offense. 41.7 points per game. That is 8th in the country. 7.1 yards per play, 7th in the country. 5 yards per rush, which is 35th in the country. On the passing side, 10.8 yards per pass. That is 3rd in the country. And 7.55% sack rate, which is 91st in the country. So honestly, not very good on the offensive line for Alabama. Not like the teams of old, honestly. On the defensive side of the ball, 20.8 points per game allowed, 33rd in the country. 4.5 yards per play, 15th in the country. 3.3 yards per rush, 24th in the country. 6.1 yards per pass, which is 16th in the country. And then sack percentage, also not like the old Alabama team, 6.25% of dropbacks and in the sack. That is 55th in the country. Let's talk about those Tennessee Volunteers now on the offensive side of the ball. 36.8 points per game, 17th in the country. And this has been in a free fall the last 3 weeks. They were number 1 in the country before they played that Oklahoma game, and it has gone downhill since then. 6 yards per play, which is 40th in the country. 5.1 yards per rush, which is 27th in the country. 8.2 yards per pass, which is 27th in the country. 8.21% sack rate. That is 104th in the country. And we talked about those tackles not being very good. But then we get to the other side of the ball, which has been very good. 12.2 points per game allowed. That is 5th in the country. 3.9 yards per play, which is 2nd in the country. 2.3 yards per rush, which is 2nd in the country. 6.5 yards per pass, which is 37th in the country, and then a sack rate of 7.59%, which is 34th in the country. Alabama is favored by 3 on the road here, over under 56.5, which is higher than the last game we talked about, which is a little bit more surprising because I do think Tennessee's defense is elite. What do you think about this game, Tyler?
Yeah, and I think the over-under is basically just going off of Tennessee's offensive performance against some of these weaker teams like my Kent State Golden Flashes, Chattanooga. I forget who else they played that they ran the score up on, but it doesn't really matter. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be an offensive game. And we kind of earlier on in the show, we were talking about how bad Alabama's defense has been. It's just so extremely talented that it's hard to fathom them giving up 25 points to South Carolina, giving up 40 points to Vanderbilt. But the team's pretty much a lack of discipline since the Georgia game just is the head scratcher. Like I've been saying, Alabama is good enough talent-wise and with Kalen DeBoer's big game coaching to beat anybody anywhere. The problem has been the lack of discipline. It's hard for me to say. That being said, can Nico pick apart Damani Jackson, Malachi Moore, Devontae Smith, the true freshman, I believe his name is Ivan Brown or something like that, who had the game-winning interception, of course, against me. And then Keon Sabb, who I'm actually kind of surprised he won the start, but he's transferred from Michigan. But yeah, can he pick apart this secondary who's been very, very disappointing thus far this season? I'm still saying no. I'm worried about Nico's decision-making, and I get it. It's a home game. It's not a primetime game, but it is at 3:30 kickoff. By the time it's 6 o'clock, that sun will be coming down. But I like Alabama here on the road. It's just I'm trusting – I'm really trusting Kalen DeBoer's big game play calling here. and Jalen Milroe. He's a veteran quarterback. Which one of these QBs is going to make the devastating mistake? It's probably going to be the younger one. That's usually how it is. Now I'm going to go Alabama here on the road. I also don't think Tennessee's going to have that much success running the football. And we talked about the sack percentage. How many of those sacks are just dumb sacks that Nico has taken? I mean, there was a situation against Florida where he just folded in half. He had 3 or 4, 5 seconds to throw. He just folds in half, takes the sack for no reason. Could have thrown the ball away. I'm worried about the inexperience for Nico here. I get it's a home game. You're going to have the home crowd. The home crowd could save Tennessee here. That's how good Neyland is. That it's one of the best stadiums in college football, one of the loudest crowds. I think it's a top 4 place to play. But I'm going to go with Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams to have a little bit more success. I think this is a lower scoring game. I like Alabama to win this on the road 27-20 against Tennessee.
I agree with you. I think this is going to be a little bit lower scoring than people think, just because, again, I don't think Nico's going to be able to exploit that secondary. That's what it comes down to. Now, if he does, if this is his go, like he figured something out game, then Tennessee can easily win this game because that Alabama secondary stopped very good. We saw that in the second half versus Georgia. It was bombs away in that second half, and a lot of those guys were open. But I do agree. I think Jalen Milroe is going to make the plays needed to be made, and I don't think Nico is. And I think Nico's going to turn the ball over in certain situations, and that's going to be the difference in this game. I do think it would be smart for Tennessee if they can just rely on the run game as much as possible in this game. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, but that is how I would attack Alabama, even though that secondary is a weakness. If you don't have the quarterback to exploit it, it can't be a weakness. So that's why I think I would run the ball if I was Tennessee. I'm going to take Alabama to win this game, and I do think it's relatively low scoring. I'm going to go Alabama 27, Tennessee 17, so we're both under there. And did you take Alabama to cover?
Yep.
And we both take out. Yeah, we both take Alabama to cover here. I'm pretty confident in that, honestly. Unless Nico figures something out, I just don't see how Tennessee wins this game. Unless Jalen Milroe just decides to turn into his old self and from a year ago and just go complete turnover machine in certain aspects, then I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, Tennessee could definitely win this game. The home crowd's going to be huge, a huge factor for Jalen Milroe. But it's hard for me to see him fix all those mistakes in 4 or 5 day span. I don't know what happened. Well, he wasn't really that great earlier on in the season. Just being honest. Now he's got a really good wide receiving core that maybe could save him here. Squirrel Wright and Brew McCoy specifically there. I think Thornton is still out. I could be wrong. If he's back, that'd be huge for Tennessee. But I'm sorry, Tennessee fans. I wanted to pick Tennessee because in the preseason, I had Tennessee beating Alabama. Big home game. I thought it would actually be a night game too. I forgot about the Georgia-Texas game coming into this. But I don't – unless Tennessee's able to run the football and control the line of scrimmage, I don't think they will win this game.
I completely agree. Tony says sellouts. Tennessee beats the Gumps. Alabama's looked absolutely horrible since the second half of Georgia. I agree, but Tennessee hasn't looked good since Oklahoma. And they really didn't even look that good in that game. So they haven't looked good since they started playing good teams or even competent teams, honestly.
Which is the truth, yeah.
He's 17 years old, though. The announcers are so cringy during Baylor games.
They always bring that up. It's annoying, but it's the truth. So you kind of have to agree to be annoyed, I guess.
Hey, Tony, I think you unmuted us, but you can definitely unmute us now because we are going to get into that game. Texas is favored by 3.5 points versus Georgia. The over-under for this game is 56. Let's jump into the Georgia Bulldogs stats here. 30.6 points per game on offense. That is 40th in the country. 6.5 yards per play on offense. That is 21st. 4.3 yards per rush, which is 65th, which is crazy to see Georgia at this late in the season. Yards per pass is 8.6, which is 24th in the country, and the offensive line is still very good. 3.16% sack rate, 25th in the country. On the defensive side of the ball, they allow 20 points per game, 22nd in the country. 5.5 yards per play, which is 67th in the country. 3.9 yards per rush, which is 41st in the country, and 7.4 yards per pass, which is 74th in the country. Sack percentage is 4.94%. That is 86th in the country. Now let's move on to the Texas Longhorns. 43.2 points per game. That is 5th in the country. 7.1 yards per play on offense, which is 10th in the country. 5.1 yards per rush, which is 25th in the country. 9.6 yards per pass, which is 8th in the country. QB sack percentage is 3.03%. That is 24th in the country. Now let's move over to the defense. 6.3 points per game, first in the country. 3.5 yards per play, which is first in the country. 3 yards per rush, which is 10th in the country. 4.6 yards per pass, which is first in the country. And 9.34% sack rate, which is 13th in the country. And I did want to hit on one thing because I brought this up as a big point of emphasis in my preview for the Texas game over on the Texas channel. Georgia's only rushing the ball on 43.95% of their snaps, and they're passing on 56.05% on their snaps. I'm going to talk about that a lot, but Tyler, I'll let you hit this first.
Yeah, and that's Georgia's game plan for you. I know I'm not. Listen, I prefer Georgia to run the football a little bit more, but they actually have kind of been struggling. And this dates back to even last year with Georgia's rush game. It just hasn't really been that effective in some of these bigger games. Now, let's touch upon Georgia's defense real quick. Georgia's defense isn't elite. It's not up to Kirby Smart's standards, but it's still a good defense if we're being honest here. I know people say, oh, get upset because Georgia gave up 31 points to Mississippi State, which is inexcusable. But for the season, Georgia's given up, 17.17 points per game. Gave up 3 points against Clemson, who looks like they have an elite offense. Again, play calling with Dabo Swinney in that game was head-scratching. Didn't make sense to me, but Georgia's defense, in exception for 2 games, has been good, but not up to Kirby Smart's standards. And, us Georgia fans, we're spoiled with how well our team has been, especially defensively, top 5 almost every single season under Kirby Smart since 2017. But some issues, and the first issue is I'm not too much of a fan of Glenn Schumann's defensive scheme. We've missed tackles. That's inexcusable for Georgia football as well. But we've missed so much on the edge, and we've given up so many gaps in the rush game on the outside, which doesn't make too much sense because Georgia is elite at stopping the run, or used to be elite at stopping the run. And you can start and point at your defensive line. Well, our defensive line, I will say, is getting better. It was kind of an interesting issue, as I was kind of worried about our interior defensive line. Nasir Stackhouse, he's been okay, I guess, but I really wanted to see more from Jordan Hall, who is a sophomore 5-star recruit. I think he is the most talented and has the most potential on the interior defensive line for the Georgia Bulldogs. He was a 5-star for a reason. Get him out there. We have yet to see him, but Warren Brinson has been stepping up, I will say. On the outside, Tyron Ingram-Dawkins has probably been Georgia's best sacker. And I believe he has 4 on the year. That's not great. Georgia doesn't get to the quarterback very much. They're going to have to get to the quarterback against Quinn Ewers if they want to win this game. And Georgia's secondary has just been a joke. It is not good at all, especially over the past 3 weeks. We let Peyton Throne look like prime time. I don't know. I mean, he had one of his best games against us. That was pretty pathetic, in my opinion. And with our cornerbacks specifically, they've been a giant letdown. And this was supposed to be an elite, talented Georgia cornerback room. And Daniel Harris has been a giant letdown. Everett has been okay. They had some blown coverages against Mississippi State, but he's been okay. Humphreys hasn't been good. I kind of want to see more from Ellis Robinson. He was a 5-star recruit for a reason as well. He is a true freshman, but he has the most raw potential in that cornerback room. Dan Jackson and Malachi Starks are both pretty good as well. Dan Jackson has been stepping up, and Malachi Starks has the elite talent. He's missed some tackles as well against Alabama, but I'm pretty sure he's cleaned that up. Georgia and Texas are both going to score upon each other. I know Texas's defense is top 5 defensively, I think, in scoring, and I believe you're top 5 in rushing yards allowed too. Both these teams are going to score. I was looking through the chat and it said 27-13, 27-10. I think both these teams are going to score in the 30s. And I think it's going to be similar to that Alabama game in which both these teams, I think Texas is going to jump out on Georgia by a couple scores early on, but Georgia's going to have to fight back, and it's going to be a pretty good back and forth game. You touched upon Dylan Bell. I guess he's been stepping up, but really, who is that premier first option for Carson Beck? We really don't have one. That's just the honest opinion. Arian Smith has too many drops. Arian Smith has 430 yards on the season. This guy could have 700 yards on the year if he caught every pass or every pass that's hit him in the hands like this in the breadbasket. This Arian Smith has had so many drops this season. He might lead the SEC in drops. Look, Georgia's going to have to play. Carson Beck's going to have to not turn the ball over. He's had some issues over the past few weeks with interceptions, which has been crazy. Carson Beck's not a turnover machine, or hasn't really been that since he was a freshman. But in the end, it's hard for me to pick Georgia here. This is a Texas primetime game. They've looked like the best team in college football. Texas has their best, I think, DB out, Derek Williams, or he's one of your better DBs. I get that. But for me, it's hard for me to pick my team here because I saw this Georgia defense against Alabama got tore up. What do I think Quinn? What do I really think Quinn's going to do? I think he's going to sit back in the pocket all day, all night, and pick apart Georgia's defense. I hope I'm wrong, but Georgia's pressures and sacks just hasn't been there this year. 11 total sacks in 6 games. Are we serious? That's absolutely horrible. I'm sorry. That's just pretty bad. You're going to have to force Quinn Ewers to turn the ball over. The good thing is he's not a skilled runner, which is the difference between him and Jalen Milroe, but he's got a way better arm talent. I like Texas in this game, to be honest with you. I'm going to take Texas at home 38-31 over my Georgia Bulldogs. So I would actually take Texas in the points there.
Okay. Yeah, I just looking at that, I think Georgia's kind of gotten away from their identity, and I agree with you. They're not as good up front to where they can just pound it down your throat. But I will say, I still think the weakness of this Texas team is up the middle at their defensive tackles. The problem is, I don't really see anyone on the schedule that has the offensive line nor the running back to exploit that. I honestly don't see anyone really in college football because Ohio State has a really good running backs, but they don't have the offensive line to line up and just pound you, and they don't want to do that anyways. So Georgia, if I'm Georgia, that is why I would try to do that. I don't think they're going to. That would be a complete 180 from what they've been doing this year. I don't see Mike Bobo doing that. And yeah, Derek Williams is out, but that's the thing. Last year, that would have been a huge deal. This year, it's not that big of a deal because guess what? You could bring in Andrew Makuba and he can play in that spot as well. And no one talks about this. Like Jahdae Barron at the cornerback position is the highest rated cornerback according to Pro Football Focus. He's put himself into first round categories in most mock drafts, which I'm shocked going into the season that he's there. I thought he'd be like a second or third round pick, but he's been phenomenal. Malik Muhammad on the other side hasn't allowed over 100 yards total on the year as well. So this secondary is revamped from last year where you had Brian Watts, who's right now is a safety in the NFL. And then you have Jahdae Barron sliding out from his nickel position to play cornerback, where you had Terrence Brooks, who's playing for Illinois. And guess what? When he goes to the NFL, he's going to be a safety too. So we had 2 safeties on the outside at cornerback. Now we have 2 legitimate guys that will be top 50 picks when they decide to go to the NFL. And then off the edge, I mean, we just saw what Anthony Hill did versus Oklahoma with 2 sacks, 11 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss. He was all over the place with Colin Simmons in there as well, playing very well for a freshman. I think he has 4 sacks as a freshman. He has a chance to tie or break the Texas record of, I believe it's 9. So he's got a chance for that. This defense is good. This game will prove to me how good they are. Do I think Georgia's elite offensively? No, but they're definitely good offensively for sure. And Carson Beck's going to have his chances downfield to make plays. And will Texas be able to stop him? We will see. I need Quinn Ewers to not be rusty because he was clearly rusty versus Oklahoma. That throw over the middle where he overthrew Matthew Golden, Quinn Ewers never overthrows people down the middle of the field. Never. He has not done it all the way back since his freshman year. He's been elite down the middle of the field, and that was one of his only overthrows I've ever seen him make. So if that continues to go in that way, that is concern for me. Also, his footwork was back to last year. It was atrocious in the pocket versus Oklahoma. I'm hoping, again, that was a rust thing. Hadn't been playing in a month, and I think anyone's shocked that he kind of played bad to start off that game. You don't know what you're talking about, honestly, because it's a month. If you're off of a football field playing actual game for a month, you're going to be rusty. That'd be like a guy who's a great three-point shooter in the NBA, off for a month, comes back in and has a rusty night. That's probably going to happen. You got to get back into rhythm. Brooks Austin, who does a really good job breaking down film on YouTube here. I watched his breakdown today of the Texas and Georgia game, and he talks about how the eye discipline of the Georgia linebackers may be an issue in this game because they've been undisciplined. They get caught in the backfield, and then guys run behind them. And Smile Munden is out for this game, is he not, Tyler?
Yeah, it seems like he's doubtful.
Yeah, so that would be really big if he misses this game, honestly, because he's probably, I would say he's your second best player at this point on your defense. I could be wrong about that. Do you agree with that or no?
I'm a big fan of C.J. Allen. Well, he's our middle linebacker on the outside. We've had Raymond Wilson having to step up. So I'd much rather have Smile Munden, but I would say, yeah, he's one of our 3 or 4 best defensive players. Our most important, though, is going to be Michael Williams on the edge.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to have to get pressure. And I'm going to say something, and I don't care if anyone thinks it's a hot take. I think this is the best offensive line in college football in a very long time that Texas has. I really believe that. All 5 of these guys are going to be top 150 picks in the NFL draft. That is rare to have that many guys on the offensive line to do that. And both of our tackles are going to be first-round picks. Kelvin Banks will be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft if he doesn't get hurt. Georgia is going to have to manufacture pressure. They are going to have to scheme up pressure. I don't see them being able to line up mano-a-mano and beat this Texas offensive line. I would be shocked if that happened. I think if Quinn Ewers just gets a little bit better from Oklahoma, doesn't make the turnover that he did earlier in the game, and Texas does what I think they're capable of doing, I think Texas wins this game 34-24. That's what I'm going to have it. I think it is a ball game for most of the game, but I think Texas does pull away late because I think they have slightly better depth than Georgia, which is crazy that I'm even saying that because I did not think going into this year I'd be able to say that, but I do think Texas covers the spread. I think they win 34-24. I think it's a good game for most of the game. I think Texas pulls away late, and I guess I would be taking the over on that as well.
Yeah, I love the over here. This is, for me, the over-under is just kind of giving Texas a lot more credit than they would UGA and Georgia's defense. But Georgia's defense has just been a letdown this season for Georgia's standards. Now, giving up 31 points to Mississippi State's embarrassing. I will. Don't get me wrong. A lot of that came from miscommunications. I'm hoping that can get fixed up. And that really should in a short period of time. But that's stuff you can't have against Texas. I just think Texas is the better team here. Georgia has a lot more injuries as well, but I don't know if that really matters. Now, it would be a lot better having a 1-2 punch at running back with Trevor Etienne and Roderick Robinson, who we really have never seen. He's a 6'1" power back with elusive speed. This guy has a lot of talent. I've never heard this in my life, and I hope someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I have never heard of a player being out for the season with turf toe. And I get it. He had surgery as well. But I thought it was only supposed to be a week-to-week thing. Okay, it's literally week 8, and he's not going to come back anytime soon, which sucks because I love Roderick Robinson, and he was a huge get for UGA. He's a big power back, and as well as he has speed. But yeah, and then obviously without Tate, Ratledge as well.
Yeah,
huge loss. Georgia's best offensive lineman. So, and then Smile Munden out, and some other players on the defensive line could be out. It's just Georgia's always banged up, but this is who Georgia is. It's always the next man up mentality. I still think it's going to be a pretty good game, but I'm just worried that Georgia does what they did against Alabama, really, and gets down by too much. You can't go down 28-0 to Texas, or this game will be completely over. Georgia will not make a comeback. If Georgia goes down 28-0 to Texas, the final is going to be 45-21 or 42-28. The game will just be pretty much over. But again, this is going to be a real fun game, a fun matchup. I just hope Georgia's defense is able to step it up because I'm fairly confident Georgia's going to score in the 30s on Texas. I think both teams are going to score 30s. But like you said, if Quinn Ewers can shake off the rust, which I've seen Quinn Ewers in these big game and big moments, he always steps up. I mean, I can't even remember a time in which he hasn't. Maybe back in 2022. But again, he was injured actually for most of that season, right? Or
Yeah,
something like that.
he had a broken thumb. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that came against Alabama. And in that early in that Alabama game, he showed the flashes. So, big game Quinn always shows up. It's can Georgia match the blow for blow? And I actually am going to say no. That's why I'm taking Texas. I know I'm a Georgia fan, and other Georgia fans will get upset for me for saying that. But I'm being dead serious, unbiased here. I think Texas will win this game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because this is definitely the most explosive athletes we face on the outside of wide receiver. Like, do I think they're 2019 LSU? Obviously not, but they're like worlds better than Oklahoma and Michigan on the outside. So it's going to be, I think it may take a drive for Texas just to get used to that speed and athleticism on the outside, but I think they'll be fine after that. I mean, they see it every day at practice. I'm hoping Isaiah Vaughn will give it a go. I think he will. Everything that I've heard says it's like a grade 1 ankle sprain, which if anyone's ever had that, it feels bad for a couple days, but after that, you should be able to go if you tape it up. So he'll play. Gunnar Helm is someone that I think is going to have a pretty big game versus Georgia. We'll see if CJ Allen gets that assignment or who does get that assignment, but he can definitely have a big game. Maybe we'll see Malachi Starks one-on-one with him at certain points in the game, but it's going to be a fun game. I think Austin is the place to be this week. And I mean, you have F1, you have the Eminem concert, you have the Sting concert, you have this game. Texas is going to have 70 plus 4 and 5-star recruits from 2025 to 2028 in attendance for this game. So this is a hell of a game. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and this is a game you don't want to lose either side, because this game right here, pretty much, I think, well, especially for Texas, if Texas win this game, they are 1,000% a lock. But I think the winner of this game is 100% or at least 85% locked in. They put themselves in a good situation. And really for Georgia, we really can't lose this game because we've already lost to Alabama. I get it was a road game, but we kind of got destroyed in that game. And I know a lot of people were saying, well, it was a fluke, but I don't think it was a fluke. Alabama just owns Georgia. That's just the bottom line. I don't know what it is with Georgia and Alabama, but for Georgia, you really can't afford to lose this game because you still have at Ole Miss and Tennessee back-to-back. So Georgia, this better be an all-in situation for Kirby Smart. I'm excited for what him and Mike Bobo are going to come up with on the offensive end, and then hopefully Glenn Schumann can prove me wrong and run some scheme something up to slow down Texas. I don't think either team is shutting either one of us out. But I'm hoping Georgia is able to run the ball and tries to run the ball. And Georgia starts out hot. That's pretty much for me. That's the only way Georgia can win this game is if they get up early. If they could go up 14-0 at the end of the first quarter or into the second half, really taking a lead at halftime, let's say, I don't know, 21-10, 24-13, or heck, even 21-13, you get the ball in the second half, go down and score a touchdown, then I'd start to feel good as a Georgia fan. But I'm just worried that the same old Georgia would come out flat in the first quarter and into the second quarter. And, oh, by the way, you're down 21-3 with the ball. You need to go down and get a TD. Oh, nope, you're going to get a field goal down 21-6 at half. That's what I'm kind of worried about for UGA. But I still think it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, I agree. Georgia has gotten off to slow starts basically every game they've played. Texas has been in the middle on that. They've had some really fast starts, some slow starts, but I think they have the best points differential in the first quarter of any team this season. So if that happens in this game, you're right. Like it could get ugly. Like our defense, listen, it hasn't been tested. I'm going to tell you right now, it's way better than Alabama's in the back end. So they're not going to be able to throw for all those yards like they did in the second half. If this game isn't close early on, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be pretty close all the way through until the end of the game. Yeah,
and it should be. But like I said, man, may the best one win here in this one. Me being a Georgia fan, you obviously a Texas fan. This is a good one to have. At least now 8 weeks into the season, both our teams halfway through. Well, we both played 6 games, but comes in as a top 5 matchup. This is everything that we thought it would be. So.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just nice, honestly, with the 12th team. Like, I can sit down and enjoy this game. I'm still going to be pumped as hell. But if we lose, like we can still make the playoff. It's still all out in there for us. There's no concern. Like even Georgia, they lose this game, still probably going to make the playoff. But it's going to be a fun game, and I'm excited. Again, guys, this has been the 5th edition of the SEC Live Show. I really appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to drop Tyler's Twitter handle right there, TylerBoy_722. Please go and follow him. There is my Twitter handle, MatthewMS97. Please go give us a follow, and please share this out with your friends and family. If you don't want to watch it, but you want to listen to it, go to Amazon, Spotify, Apple. Check it out there. Type in the voice of college football. Look up SEC. It will pop right up. Also, use the Amazon link in the description. Does not change the buying process. Puts a little bit of change takes a little bit of change from Jeff Bezos, puts into Mark Rogers' pocket. So I appreciate that. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. And again, this has been the 5th edition. We will be back next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you guys for joining us. And guys, I'll give it a hook 'em since we're playing this week. Tyler, if you want to give it, go Dogs.
Yeah, go Dogs. And like I said, we'll be here. One of us will be happy. The other one will be sad. I guess I wouldn't really be sad because I am expecting the loss, but it should be a fun matchup and fun game regardless. So go Dogs anyways.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not going to be sad, but I will be disappointed, which I guess is worse in some aspects. But thank you guys again for being here. This has been the 5th edition of SEC Live. We will see you next week.